All right, 9 minutes after 12 noon on a Wednesday afternoon. Still kind of skanky looking out there. Cloudy skies, gray, blah. Hopefully we're going to see some of that sunshine a little bit later on. Temperatures are not too bad. Can't complain for October, right? But, yeah, it's not too nice out there right now. At least it's not raining, so that's a positive. What's even better is it's not snowing. That's soon enough, right? Maybe sometime next month we might see our first snow. Sometimes in November, right? I can remember a couple of Thanksgivings where we got walloped with some big snow. But, maybe we'll be lucky. The mayor just walked in the room, so maybe we'll be lucky and he'll proclaim no snow until January or something like that. I don't know if he has the power to do that, if that's in the city charter or not, but hopefully we can then persuade him to do that. How you doing, Mayor? What's up?
I'm doing well.
Snow, talking snow as he walks in the door, right?
Why are you talking about snow, Barry?
Well, I'm saying at least it's not snowing out. That's always good. Yeah. Always a good thing.
Anything's preferable, right?
Yeah. But you never know. Yeah. I mean, next month, we've seen some in November.
Winter. I mean, look at how you're dressed today.
Well, I've got a flannel shirt on.
Flannel shirt on, with a T-shirt on. It's shorts. Okay.
Cargo shorts.
You got shorts.
Yeah.
I don't know what to say.
It's kind of halfway.
You're usually sitting here with either one of your Hawaiian shirts or some T-shirt, right? No.
But at least I've got shoes on, though. I've got
good
shoes.
For you. That's
no flops today. So
that's good.
Yeah.
That's good. All right. So I could tell you're a little ambivalent about the weather. Yeah.
Well, I'm just, I'm looking at it, and it's like it's not raining, it's not sunny out, it's just kind of like bleh.
Yeah.
Just
kind of like it's not hot.
Yeah, it's just kind of like there.
In between.
But hopefully the sun's going to come out a little bit later on. I went walking 2 days ago, checked the radar first, nothing on the radar, got drenched walking home.
And
it's like, where did this come from? Yeah, it's like, so hopefully we'll see some sun for the walk later on. So how you been? We didn't see you last week.
Wait, where was I last week?
We had a
that's right. The Red Sox
makeup.
Preempted. Yeah, the Red Sox preempted me.
And they really didn't need to make up that game.
They already clinched the division by then.
And it was against Baltimore.
And
Baltimore was like 111 games. They've lost 100. Yeah, right. And the Red Sox had already clinched everything, so there really was no need to make up that game.
No. Well, we'll have to take that up with station management. How dare you preempt me with a meaningless game at the end of the regular season? Yeah. No, things are well. What's happened in the last couple of weeks? Well, what are the big things? We're just plugging away. I mean, it's just, in my time as mayor, there are lots of times where we just sort of just buckle down and just move stuff along that the public doesn't get, see firsthand, whether they're development projects or they're, different kinds of reforms that we're working with the city council. We've just been plugging away.
So what's up with ABC? Any new developments since we saw you last?
No, not really. I know that the city has a pending motion to dismiss their complaint, and I think ABC is due soon to respond to that. I don't believe that's happened yet, although I think that will happen soon, and so we await that. But that'll be left in the court's hands. In the meantime, we've been keeping an eye on what they've been doing out on the streets, and they've been picking up the trash and picking up the recycling and the recycling rejections. The number of receptacles that they've rejected has gone way down. And so we're just, we're making sure that we're spot checking them to make sure that, they are rejecting the receptacles on a legitimate basis, and that when they do reject them, that they are they're letting the homeowner know why they're being rejected. So that's something that we've had to keep on top of them about, and we'll continue to do that. And if people think that they have not been, treated appropriately by ABC, please let us know. We haven't really been getting too many complaints in the last week, but in the last couple of weeks actually. But look, if there are issues, just please alert us to that.
Yeah, I haven't seen, in my travels, haven't seen many, if any, rejection stickers on barrels at this point. It seems as though that's leveled off pretty well.
Yeah, I think there's some. I think in the first day there were over 900 rejected, and it's averaged, I think it's been in the ballpark of 20 or 30 a day now. So
where are they? All over the city?
All over the city, probably more in Ward 2 than in most places, it looks like, if there's a geographic concentration. And we've looked at some of the barrels, or folks have looked at some of the barrels, and there are probably some stuff in some of those barrels that ought not to be there. And sometimes, as I said, they've rejected others that have contained only a little bit of something that's not on the list. And so we're insisting on a level of reasonableness that we think our residents and homeowners are entitled to. But in any event, if they are where there are rejections, there should be a clear notice of the basis of the rejection, and that still needs some improvement.
All other aspects of the contract are being respected, including like the bulky pickup and all of that. There's been no complaints about any of that.
It's all been happening. Yeah.
Right. Have there been any communications at all between your office and ABC over the last few
between
weeks?
the lawyers.
Just the lawyers, huh?
Yep.
Hate when that happens, huh? My lawyer will contact your lawyer, and
it's in court. That's what happens.
Yeah. Small city though. You bump into these people around town, and
I see people from time to time. I saw Mike Camara out to lunch. It was a couple of months ago, and said hi. Nothing personal. He has his business interest to protect. I've got my city to protect, and that's I think everybody understands that.
So we've got a new state representative about to take the oath in January. Chris Hendricks, have you had a chance to sit down and chat with him?
Yeah, indeed. And we had a good lunch. We went out to Freestones the other day and talked about a number of issues.
Who picked up the check?
Well, I did. It's not like he didn't insist on it. I just felt, like I should pick up the bill.
Yeah, welcome to the team. Dinner on me today, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's not like the next time we go out, I'm going to go to like the bottom of the wine list to see the most expensive. Oh, it's your turn now. I don't do that, Barrett. Just so you're clear. So I'm not playing.
Well, here comes the check. I got to go to the men's room. I'll be right back.
You ever see that Geico commercial with the alligator at the table, who's got the small arms, and he says can't quite reach the check?
Yeah.
No, I don't play those games, Barry. No, we had a good talk. I think he ran a good race. He's really eager to get going. After the meeting, I gave him some stuff to sink his teeth into on a number of issues that are important to him. He certainly wants to encourage infrastructure investment in his district, which is essentially most of the North End and all of the town of Acushnet. The opioid crisis is a big issue for him, as it is for me, and I'm glad to see that's a priority for him. I think there is, you and I have discussed this, and I think he agrees that there's some room still to go at the state level in terms of further restricting the prescribing of prescription medications, prescription opioids. And he wants to see improvements in education funding, and that's certainly from the state, and that's certainly something that I'd like to see. So, we've talked a lot about those and other issues, and so I think he's going to be off to a good start, and I look forward to doing whatever I can to support him to make him effective for the North End and for Acushnet, for that matter.
So you're kind of sort of like the quarterback for the team. You're the mayor, and these guys go off and they catch the ball and everything else and bring it back. So you kind of have an agenda that you want these guys to go to Boston and work on, and various things to accomplish. Does he seem to be on the same page, or his priorities where yours are?
Yeah, look, not everybody's going to be in complete agreement about every conceivable issue and prioritizing those issues in exactly the same way. Nobody should expect that, right? But because what public officials come to their jobs with different life experiences and perspectives. But I think some of the things that we're working on here are exactly what aren't all that controversial. What's important to us isn't all that controversial, right? We need more money to do certain things to educate our kids. We need to deal with the problem of the pervasive use of opioids and the pervasiveness of addiction here, just as it is everywhere in New England and many other parts of the country. So so there isn't a big ideological divide. Among between me and on the one hand and our state reps and state senator on the other hand, I think there's some differences, but I mean, like the basic necessities are things that we all agree on in principle. And it's a question of executing. Like, how do you actually make that happen? How do you actually increase educational funding? How do you actually take steps to, restrict, the prescribing of opioids? How do we attract more money for our major infrastructure projects, whether they're in the port or somewhere else in the city? Those are the big things that we talk about.
Have you had a chance to sit down with the outgoing representative, Kazera?
I haven't. I saw him not too long before.
Nobody loves a loser, huh?
No, I don't. Me for that.
I'm only joking.
No,
I like Bob Kazera.
I like Bob, and Bob had a good run, and I think he's got a growing family with grandchildren. Spends a lot of time with them, and I'm sure Bob is. Has taught at BCC and other places.
He looks like he's 12. So, I mean,
He looks good. I wish I looked like I was 12. I don't. But I think Bob will make a good transition to whatever he wants to do next, which will include being a great grandfather. Not a great grandfather, a great grandfather. You get what I mean.
Right.
Very good grandfather. How's that?
So it is an election year, and we've talked about this before, and I know the various candidates all come a knocking this time of year looking for your endorsement. Last time I spoke to you, you weren't ready yet to endorse the Democrat nominee for governor, Jay Gonzalez. Have you made any decisions in that area at this point? Are you going
that I would like to announce today?
Sure, right here. I mean, you got a microphone. There's a lot of people listening. So how convenient, huh?
Look at that. Making no announcements today. I mean, obviously, I am a Democrat, and so I would presume to support the Democratic nominee, and that's not to say that I would agree with him on every matter. And there are some things that I agree with the current governor on. Some things I think he's done well. Some things I think that need some improvement. But I'll make that decision when it comes. But I am a Democrat, so people shouldn't be shocked that I didn't go flocking with a number of other mayors to endorse a Republican governor. It's, my view is I have a party affiliation. I also want to make sure that we're doing the absolutely best thing above all for the city, and so I weigh all those things together before I make my decision.
Is party affiliation more important than endorsing the better candidate, the guy that's got a better plan, or the gal who's got a better plan for the city? I mean, Gonzalez is talking about taxes and raising taxes on endowments for the colleges, which would ultimately mean that New Bedford residents would be paying more for tuition. We'd lose money for.
We don't have a college. We're one of the few cities actually.
Dartmouth.
Anywhere
in Massachusetts where your kids go to school, but
I think that actually would result in a net benefit to New Bedford. Right. I mean, just looking at it from the most parochial sense, because it's not, if we had like 2 or 3 major universities in the middle of the city, I would probably think differently about it. But strictly from a net benefit, net direct financial benefit perspective, New Bedford will probably would probably gain from that than lose. But in answer to your broader question, yeah, I mean, it's the city's interest first, and I think there's some things that Governor Baker has done well, and there's some things that concern me, and especially as I see them through the prism of of New Bedford's own interests. There are a number of things actually. So,
well, give me an example of something that he's done that's kind of.
Well, I mean, I'll just throw this out to you. Name a New Bedford resident that's on a statewide board. You can't. Actually, I'm the only one because by statute, I have to be on the Seaport Economic Council. But there's nobody on the UMass board, Mass Development, Mass Cultural Council. You name the Mass CEC. I mean, you can go down the list. I'm not aware of anybody. And those are the big boards. There may be some obscure state board that has representation here. The governor's transition team, there wasn't a single New Bedford resident on that. There were dozens and dozens of people on that. I've raised, and when they did their statewide listening sessions at the beginning of their administration, they did them all over the state. They again did dozens of them. There wasn't a single one held in New Bedford, right? I mean, like that to me is indefensible, right? And undefendable. So the lack of representation of New Bedford in that administration is a concern, and I've shared it with them. I've been public about it, and it hasn't changed. So that's why one of the things I often get accused of being, louder than most when it comes to advancing, my city's and our region's interest, and that's because I have to be more assertive and more aggressive in order to get the point across. So, I mean, that's just one example, and that's certainly a concern, and it's something I've told them. I said, look, if you get reelected, and they probably will get reelected, that I want to see addressed. I mean, I just throw that as one example, but that's not a trivial one.
Has Gonzalez aligned himself with anybody from the city that might?
I've had many conversations with him, and statewide candidates all come knocking for my endorsement.
Oh, sure, yeah.
And so I'll continue to talk to him and see where that goes. I know him. I knew him. I actually didn't know him before I became mayor, but I had a number of people that we knew in common, and so. But I worked with him when he was in the Patrick administration as the Secretary of Administration and Finance, and I have a lot of respect for him. I think he's a capable guy, and so we'll see.
Yesterday, Jeff Deal was on the program. He had a press conference in town, all throughout the area, I guess, addressing this apparent decision by Senator Warren to explore a run for the White House. Boy, big surprise there, right?
Well, that's just
huge surprise. I mean, I was bowled over by that, right? Weren't you?
No surprise there.
Yeah.
No surprise there.
He makes a valid point that if this were in the middle of a term, 3 years into a term, 4 years into a term, it says, you know what, this is my opportunity, this is my now, this is, I got to do this. You understand that. But when somebody is running for a new term, and the day after they get elected, they, start the resumes and hit the campaign trail and everything else, I mean, that doesn't show a whole lot of respect, in my opinion, to the voters of Massachusetts. I mean, we will be, if she decides to run for president, that kind of leaves us with one senator for at least the next 2 years, and possibly puts us into a situation where we are having a special election in a couple of years down the road.
Yeah.
I mean, shouldn't she make a decision one way or the other? Because this isn't in the middle of a term; it's the start of a term.
I don't know. I mean, I just consider the opposing argument. So I get that, and I'm, I think as a campaign, saying that on the campaign is probably not something that she wanted to do. I presume that she was asked a question somewhere and didn't want to come across as, too coy on the issue. Because look, I mean, she's clearly interested in the job, and there was certainly the start of a groundswell of support for her even in the last presidential race. So. I would offer people that there's a sort of a countervailing view, and that is, if she's might be the potential president of the United States. I know that's not something that you get too excited about, but if she's,
I'm going to move to Australia with Barbara Streisand,
yeah. So
and Rosie O'Donnell. I'm going to hang out and have cookouts on the Barbie.
I'd love to see that. If she's seen as a legitimate presidential contender, in some ways that actually, raises her political profile as senator, right? And that's because, look, if they think that, I don't know, I mean, if another senator is if she needs to get the support of some other senator for some particular bill, and that senator knows that, well, Elizabeth Warren might become the president someday, and I might need the president to be on board with the things that I like to see get done, then, that she might just be able to win over support that she wasn't otherwise. She
hasn't filed any bills, though. That's the thing. I mean, how many bills has she filed on behalf of the fishing industry?
Well, she's been support. So, I mean, if you're asking me about her support for the fishing industry, I think it's a little unfair to say she's done. It's not. It is somewhat unfair to say that she's done nothing for it. I mean, she early on was a supporter of the buyout program and was pushed that really hard. When the ground fish industry really started to collapse after the institution of the catch share program, and she was certainly directly involved in the championing of establishing a fund and also making sure that individual fishermen at least got something, at least individual boat owners in particular. And then on the monument issue, I mean, I think she agreed. I mean, I went up, if you recall, I testified before the House on monuments and the monument designation, and I espoused the view that the monument designation should be decided through the Magnuson-Stevens Act, right? The mechanisms that public, the mechanisms of vetting, the public hearings, the stakeholder outreach, the scientific vetting that takes place under Magnuson should take place with the monuments because, as it happened with the Obama administration, that didn't happen. There was no process there, and that was my biggest complaint. She has said, and publicly, that it should happen through Magnuson, which is something that a lot of other Democrats weren't willing to do.
But she never did endorse, and I've read her positions on this. She never did endorse reversing the Obama decision. She just said, it should be decided over here. She never took a position on it, and her position actually is one that she supports the monument. And so she likes it the way it is. So that's not.
I didn't say she saw it exactly the way I do.
Right, but I mean, but my point is we got to look at it from the broader interest of the fishing industry.
But I mean, I've heard on the program a lot of times that she's done nothing for the fishing industry.
Well, that hasn't helped the fishing. She hasn't. She filed legislation in order to help a Malaysian investment company get a casino built in Taunton, but she hasn't filed a piece of legislation to help the New Bedford fishing industry do anything, get those licenses back or do anything. I mean, what has she done specifically in Washington that has championed this?
Well, that's what I'm saying. I mean, I think taking a position on the monuments that is to the right of where most in her party is not nothing. I think that was not insignificant, even though she
supports the monument. That position was clear on the website.
No, I understand that, but there's a potential for more monuments that would be far more damaging to the fishing industry than the one that was imposed, right? So, if you start looking at monuments on the continental shelf in places where guys are going out and scalloping, then that's that could be a big deal. What she's saying is, no, there's got to be more of a process, which is exactly what I've been banging away at. And then on the buyout program, she was in the middle of that. I mean, so all I'm saying is, look, do I want the elected officials in Washington to do more for the fishing industry? Yes, I do. Yeah, right. Sometimes I feel a little alone and
you are alone on it. I mean, be honest about it,
right? Right.
Call these guys out. They're in your party. They're in your party, but they're letting you down. They're not helping.
There's a but here. So the but is. It's not as I don't accept the idea that she's done nothing for the fishing industry. I've worked with her staff. Bruno Freitas, her fishing guy, is from New Bedford and probably understands commercial fishing as well as anybody on Capitol Hill. And so he's been in the middle of all of these discussions as well. So. I just want people to understand where I'm coming from.
I'm told that when she was here in the spring and met with you guys down on the waterfront there to film her commercial, and she said it was in Fall River or whatever the heck it was. No, she said Fall River was New Bedford, whatever it was.
As long as she's getting it wrong in the reverse direction.
The factory's closing. Yes,
as long as she's giving more credit to New Bedford than we're entitled to.
But she promised at that time she was going to put somebody from her staff on this issue, and I understand she still hasn't filled that position. She hasn't followed through on that promise, and that's been months now.
On which position?
That she was going to appoint somebody from her staff to connect with the fishing industry, to work with the fishing industry. And I understand she hasn't done anything like that at all.
No,
there's nobody from her office working on it.
Bruno Freitas handles fishing industry.
So he's right down on the waterfront with her, with the industry.
But a lot of people on that waterfront know him. I mean, he's from New Bedford.
Right, my larger point, though, I didn't mean to get into a discussion on fishing, but that is an important issue here, obviously. But my larger point is, if she is hitting the campaign trail on November 7th, we've got no representation. Right? I mean, she can't be a full-time senator and be a candidate for president at the same time. It just doesn't work. We've seen this happen before. We've seen this play out many times.
Yeah.
So we are basically going to be left with one senator and Senator Markey for 2 years.
But you've been saying she hasn't been showing up for anything anyway. So.
Bingo. So, I mean, wouldn't you rather have somebody
I accept that idea, but
wouldn't you rather have somebody that's going to be there that wants to be there? I mean, I think she should sign a pledge saying, "Look, if I get reelected on November 6th, I'm not going anywhere for the next 6 years. I'm not going to run for president because you people voted for me to represent New Bedford and in Massachusetts, and I'm not going to go anywhere. I'm going to stay and get the job done."
Yeah. Well, as I said, I think candidates sometimes, office holders sometimes actually enhance their influence by.
By going on CNN yelling at Trump?
No, but
how does that help New Bedford?
No, but I mean, as I said, if as I spelled out in the scenario, in the scenario laid out before. Look, I mean, if her colleagues in the Senate know that she might be the next president, they're probably going to be more willing to listen to her. Like, because who knows? I mean, she might be. I mean, I don't know. If there are going to be a lot of candidates.
So are you going to make an endorsement in that race? Or are you going to let
I already endorsed her.
Oh, you did endorse her?
Yeah,
I was unaware
months
of that.
ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
So on the governor's race, you haven't made an endorsement
No.
yet, and you may not, or you're going to, or you just
I don't know.
haven't decided
I don't
yet?
know. I haven't
Are you going to
decided
run
to.
next year for that 4-year term or what?
I knew
Just
we were
between
get to
me
that.
and you.
Yeah. Oh, I don't know.
Still
Like I said, I still haven't taken the bumper sticker off my car from the last one. But sooner or later, I'm going to clean my car, Barry, and then it'll entail removing the bumper sticker. But I haven't gotten.
Well, it took
gotten
me a
that
year,
far
but
yet.
I finally beat it out of you last year, right? Last time.
Oh my God, you wore me down, Barry.
How's the potholes?
How's the pothole?
How's the potholes doing, Mayor? Everybody's going to hang up now because how are we doing with the potholes?
Well, I know Big Al's going to, I'm sure, call in and tell me about a few in the south.
Well, he wants
end,
that
and-
bench back in front of the library there.
Oh, yeah.
Did you ever get that
yeah,
camper
yeah.
towed away from Brock Avenue? Remember that?
I haven't seen it. I haven't seen it. Yeah,
Okay.
I haven't seen it recently. The city's doing more street work now than it has in a long, long time, and that's because we've made a commitment. The city council made a strong commitment to with me to fund through our capital improvement program $1.6 million for street repairs, which are happening all over, and that's in addition to the money that we get from the state. Up until a few years ago, we were putting nothing into that. Now we're putting a substantial amount, and we're also getting a fair amount of funding from some funding. I should say a fair amount. I don't want to overstate it. Some funding from EverSource to do work on roadways to where there's been a lot of patching over the years. So that's happening, and then the bigger road projects like Cogsall Street and Union Street and the southern end of Route 18 that are well underway and have been really moving along and looking good, looking better all the time, and all three of them are well into the fourth quarter of their projects. So we'll be excited to see those things be pulled away. That Union Street has got they'll put another coat of what's called binder on that stretch of construction in the spring after it's had a chance to settle over the winter, which is the proper way to do those kinds of projects. So that reduces cracking. But that project is largely done now. And same thing with Cogsall, and next year the Route 18 will be all done, and you'll see it'll look a lot different. It'll look a lot nicer cosmetically, but you'll see that there will be crossings in a number of places on Division Street and over on Rivet and a couple of others. So that's really shaping up, and people can expect to see more of this as time goes forward. We've done now is through good planning and a commitment to this capital program. You'll see the roads eventually start to be in a condition that people are entitled to. It's the streets got in the condition they're in because of a lack of funding commitment over a period of time. Where we've now have a system in place that will get it back up into shape.
It takes a while to fill all these potholes and repave streets. I think people have very short patience. They want things done immediately, and
Yeah,
It's
no,
taken
that's
a long
why
time
I appreciate the opportunity to talk about it, because that's exactly what it is, and it's not something that lends itself an explanation that lends itself to sound bites. But the streets also, on the flip side, they take a long time to deteriorate. But once they're deteriorated, it takes even longer to get them all back up to speed. But we've started. We're addressing it. It's not just because people are talking about it. It's also because, look, I live in the city. I drive on the streets. I see it too, and it's important that we have streets that do the job and look appropriate.
So you figure 18 is going to be done, what, in about a year, you said?
It'll be less than a year.
Less than a year.
Yeah.
18 will be all set. It seems like, it's going all the way down to the Cole Road, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and it'll look a lot better. There'll be more ornamental lighting and more trees. It'll be a lot less asphalt. We got rid of the old cement pedestrian overpass down by the Orpheum Theater, down by Ben Rose, and so I think that was nobody was using that. Very few people were using that. That got rid of an eyesore. So it's looking the way that it should. I mean, people should be able to drive in the city on a main road like that and have it look nice and inviting. I mean, one of the things that we're going to be focusing on the next, over the next year is to get all of Route 18 from 195 or from Coggeshall Street all the way down to Cove Street to look to be in better condition. I mean, a big part of it is nominally under the state's control, the northern stretch of it, but we need to make the whole thing look good regardless of who owns it, and if we have to step in, we probably will step in to take some of the state's maintenance load off because the state's not really getting to it enough, then so be it. But a lot of people see that stretch of roadway, and we want to residents and visitors to the city alike, and it should reflect well on the city. It should be in a condition that people can say, oh yeah, this place takes care of itself. So that's the goal in the next year. A lot of garbage, accumulates in the wintertime, especially the snow melts, but so it does require work. But that's something that we want to prioritize. From
a nonpartisan point of view, how do you view this Kavanaugh thing? Now, you're a father of two daughters, obviously. Three daughters. Oh, I thought you had two. When did you have the other one? I didn't. Is that new since you were on last week?
12 years ago.
Wow. Okay. I don't know why I thought you had two daughters, but
I have two at the high school and one in middle school.
All right. So you're a parent of three daughters, and obviously a lot of this is concerning to you as a parent. And I'm a father of two sons, and again, from a nonpartisan point of view, how do you view this? I mean, we've gotten to a point where certainly we want to tell women that, the days when something happens and you bring it up and you're not believed or you're ridiculed, you're afraid to bring it up because you might not be believed. Those days are over, and you got to be heard. You make an allegation, you got to be heard. But yet at the same time, it almost seems what's happened in this case is that we're willing to believe an accuser without giving the accused the benefit of the doubt as well. And again, I say that from a nonpartisan point of view. And there's a lot of concern for parents with young boys. Be careful. Don't be alone. Or guys hiring people. Don't hire any young women. I mean, you might wind up in trouble. So somewhere along the way, this whole thing just went nuts. What do you make of all of this whole dialogue?
Yeah. Well, a couple things. The social norms have changed, right? I mean, I don't want to sound like too much of a social scientist, but the way that the men and women interact and the expectations around that have certainly changed since, this incident occurred, right? There's some of that. So the scale by which these things are judged is definitely different. And I'm not saying that's inappropriate or not, but I'm just saying that it is different. I think and it's hard to, I know you're saying this is not partisan, but it's almost like whether you or I or anybody else comments on this, this thing is so hyper partisanized, for lack of a better term, that it's any comment on it will be seen as taking, a Democratic or Republican side. I think one of the reasons it's divisive is because, there is this evolution of expectations of, the way that men and women interact, and I'm sure that there isn't sort of a general agreement out there. You know, my own sense, but more particularly, you know, for me, it's very troubling in the sense. What's troubling is that on the one hand, you know, as the father of daughters, you know, I would never want my daughter to be put in a situation like the one that had been described by Dr. Ford, right? You know, regardless of, you know, however you credit her story, you wouldn't want your daughter to be in a position like that. You know, on the other hand, you know, I look at a guy like Brett Kavanaugh, who's, you know, more or less my age. He's like 5 years older. He's Catholic like me. You know,
same line of work.
High school athlete, same line of work. When he was over at Ken Starr's office, I was down the street at the Justice Department working, and there was some, you know, a little bit of overlap in the stuff I was doing with him.
Did you know him?
I don't know him. So, you know, and I've been to not so much parties in high school, but certainly parties in college. And, you know, it's like, so, you know, you do stuff in college and when you're younger that you don't, might not be proud of, but that's true of everybody, right? And, you know, so it's hard not to be at least somewhat sympathetic about that. I did think, and, you know, if you don't ask me, and it's because everybody will listen to me while you're saying on the one hand, on the other hand, I mean, I'll just say it. I think I did find his representations to lack credibility, though. It's just the sort of the some of the stuff that he was, and look, I mean, some people think he was just lying the whole time. I think he just there wasn't, you know, a degree of, you know, hey, look, I did stupid stuff, and, you know, I have no recollection of this, but I feel so badly for her, and if she went through that, I just, you know, and even if, you know, at some level, you'd think the guy would say something like, you know, I kind of remember her, but you know what, I would never do anything that she's describing. I'm not saying that she may be misinterpreting things, but you know, forcing myself on her.
Well, he flat out says he wasn't even there.
Yeah, which is kind of like, you know. And
he did say we have no malice toward her at all, and my daughter even prayed for her. You know, so I mean.
Yeah, it's all, you know, that's all good, but you know, the you know, diminishing of, like, you know, drinking and partying when he's got his high school yearbook, that is just said some pretty outrageous things for a high school year. I know high school yearbooks are.
I would not want to be judged by my high school.
No, neither would I. But what I'm saying is, but there are differences in degree, right? I mean, he's talking about being, you know, an alumnus of an alumna or alumnus of, you know, being with some, you know, other high school girl, and that's just like, come on. As a father of daughters, I'd be like, anybody talked about my daughter that way, I, you know, be fighting words. So, you know, there was a level of, and frankly, I knew people like that. I went to college with some guys who went to Georgetown Prep. My wife did. Went to, you know, because she went to college at Georgetown University. There were a lot of these guys from Georgetown Prep were there, and the feeling was like, yeah, that's the culture at that prep school. Yeah, I mean, just a lot of really wealthy kids who are entitled, and so he fits a certain stereotype, and
well, we can't judge people on stereotypes, right?
No,
because you fit a stereotype doesn't mean
but you have the yearbook, you have, you know, others who come out and say, yeah, of course he was drinking all the time, and then he's like, no, that, you know, it really wasn't any big deal. It's like, come on, it is a little hard, a little far-fetched. And I also, you know, he just didn't sound that judicial when he was up there. I mean, the ranting, the defiance, and then getting into partisan stuff, like, it was just like talking about the Clintons. I mean, whatever you feel about the Clintons had nothing to do with this. So, and I just thought, wow, it just sounded really inappropriate for a guy who's trying to get, you know,
but see, now you're drifting into the partisan stuff. And I'm saying he should. Let me just try to steer you back.
I'm talking about. No, because I anticipate your next question.
Well, what I'm saying is
if you were on the Judiciary Committee, Mayor, what would you?
I'm not even going to go there because I want to keep it. I'm trying to keep it as a parent of daughters, and I'm a parent of sons.
Yeah.
And here's a situation where you got a guy, just because he was in college and he admitted to drinking a lot of beer, we all did, right? Allegations were made against him, and there's no proof to back up those allegations. See, that's the problem that we're facing right now. It's a case where she said, well, he did this to me, and he says, I did not.
Well,
Where is the proof?
There is evidence, right?
You would take this as a prosecutor to court?
I don't know. I would certainly investigate it a lot more before I made that decision. But there are domestic violence cases and sexual assault cases that are brought in courthouses all across America that are based, largely on the testimony of the victim, right? So, and we're not in a courtroom. We don't, there isn't, the standard of proof isn't beyond a reasonable doubt here. We're asking the question whether there's something that's, has a much lower threshold for the outcome, which is, this should this person be on the highest court in the land? It's not. It's a.
I don't think the fact that he farted in college and drank a lot of beer in college should be enough to keep him out.
No.
And without somebody being able to place him at that party. Or without somebody being able to remember what day the party was.
It was the way he described it. To me, it kind of rang.
Does he have a right to be angry? I mean, he was angry that day. Doesn't he have a right to be angry, do you think? I mean, if that happened to you, wouldn't you be angry?
I'd be angry.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be yelling.
I wouldn't
be yelling about it. I'd be a lot cooler about it than him. I would.
So you think there's some there, as they say, right?
Yeah, I mean,
I'm just worried about guys being now. It seems as though we're at a point in our time.
And by the way, I've sort of I think Supreme Court nominations have become way too partisan. I mean, before this, and it's a pretty recent thing.
Yeah.
I think he's among. And I'd say this probably about there are probably lots of folks about whom this could be said. He's qualified to be on the court in terms of his, legal experiences, the depth with which he's thought about constitutional and statutory issues and the role of the court in American government. But he is. But you got to be more than that, right? To be on, it should be more than that. And there is a character question as well. Right, that has to be applied to any candidate, and that's why they go through background checks and deep vetting by the Senate. I honestly, when he was first nominated, I thought, well, if I were in the Senate, I know he's, conservative, but the president's going to nominate somebody who's conservative, and what you really want is someone who's, who would interpret the Constitution and faithfully, right, and I would have probably, I cringe at all the partisanship when it comes to the Supreme Court. But then these hearings came up, and he came across. I just think he came across so poorly, Barry, that it really raised questions about his character. He didn't have to yell and scream. He didn't have to get into partisanship. It's like, where's all this stuff coming from?
But beyond all of that stuff,
yeah.
Does he? I mean, we have not yet got to a point where you're guilty until proven innocent, right? And it seems as though that's where we're going on this. I mean, you got some of these senators that are well, even if
he said too much, but he said too much. That's what I'm talking about. I'm talking. Yeah. So she comes in and says X happened. He says not X, right? And that's all you have. And he seems like a reasonable person. I would agree with you. That's not a basis to disqualify him. I think he went further than that. I think he was up there. I think he was just a plain jerk up there. And it's like, really? He's going to be on the court for the rest of his natural life? I mean, come on. That's the way I come down. I mean, not everybody listening to me is going to agree with that.
Sure, no, absolutely not. But I wanted to talk about it as father to father.
But it's also not right. It's not just a question of fairness to him. Ultimately, it's the integrity of the Supreme Court that is at issue. And it may at some level not seem to be fair to him personally. And I think there's some of it isn't. I mean, the guy's gone through this extreme vetting, but at the end of the day, it's the integrity of that institution that matters the most.
All right, let me take a real quick break, and then we're going to get every call that's on the line. We'll get to it. Stay tuned. You're next on WBSM. All right, welcome back to the program. Got a few minutes left with the mayor. Let's get right to your calls. Appreciate you hanging on. You next in WBSM. Good afternoon.
Yeah, hi, good afternoon.
Hi.
I wish when the mayor came on, we could spend more time talking about...
Well, you know what? You've got time and you're wasting it. Do you want to get to your question?
Oh, hold the question
Hold
one
on,
second.
the mayor's got to put his
I'm having a
headphones
problem
in.
with the headphone.
Is that push it all the way in?
Is it on, Lee?
You know, try this set right here.
Okay.
All right, take the one John's got right now.
Oh, jeez. Yeah, look at this. Well, it's not even plugged in.
All right, what's your question for the mayor?
Go ahead. Okay, here we go. Sorry about that.
Yeah, I was just wondering, there's a couple of street signs down, so when you go by, you can't tell what street it is. One of them's on Rockdale and Granite,
Rockdale and Granite. Okay.
and the other one's on Sandstone and Pamela Drive.
Okay.
Is that it?
Sandstone,
Well,
Pam. So they look like they've been knocked down, or
Well, because you have one sign there saying Rockdale, but none saying Granite.
oh, okay.
And the
Cross
other one would say Sandstone, but nothing on top. There was one at one time. I don't know if someone took it off or whatever, but
Not
I'd
there
like to
anymore.
have the...
All right, appreciate it. We got it. 508-996-0500.
If they took off Pamela, it was my instincts tell me
Pamela.
somebody named Pamela or the boyfriend of Pamela.
Pamela, yeah, absolutely. Well, if they break up, it'll be out in the trash, and ABC will see it, right, and reject the can.
Yeah, right.
You're next to WBSM. Go ahead.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Barry.
Hi.
I disagree with the mayor. I think you unjustly treated Judge Kavanaugh
Okay.
with due respect because the question he was asked, his back was against the wall, his family, his children, and I think you poorly denounced that man. Thank you very much.
I appreciate the call. 508-9. Did you want to address that or just...
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to let that lie. I think I told you, the way I felt about it. There's a way to do it and a way not to do it, and it's not to say that you don't push back, you don't call, the senator on, a stupid question, and there are a number of them. But Democrat and Republican ask some stupid questions, but there's a way. He's up for an extremely important job, and we have to have the highest standards for that job. And if a guy completely loses his cool like that, I just think that it's just that's a basis to question whether he's up for it. That's all.
All right, 508-996-0500. You're next with the mayor. Go ahead. Hello, you're on the air. All right, you're next with the mayor. Go ahead.
Hi, how you doing? Two
Good.
quick questions for the mayor. What's the latest on the public safety bill, and it's moving at a snail's pace? And the headquarters, is there any thing in that project to widen the doors? Thank you.
Which the public safety part to widen the door? I'm not sure about that. We'll do a public safety center, which will be going at the St. Anne's site. And we haven't, we haven't come to think of it, we haven't made an announcement about this. The city council authorized the purchase of that property. That closed. I think the sale of that property closed, I don't know, a couple of weeks ago or so. So yeah. So here's the breaking news. That's where the new facility is going to go. I think actually
At the St. Anne's property.
At the St. Anne's property, and it's moving forward. There's the architects are working on it right now. They're sort of reducing some things to save.
Where exactly
cost.
is the St. Anne's property?
Brock Ave and Ruth Street, right? The church that's been vacant for, I don't know, 20 years or so now. So that's where the new facility will go, which will be great for that neighborhood. I mean, as we know, that's a neighborhood at the top of the peninsula that everybody agrees that it needs to be stabilized, and then having a public safety facility there will help do that.
So there's currently a church there?
There is, but it's
Okay.
been.
I don't know why I was thinking St. Anne's Credit Union for some reason.
No, I'm sorry. The St. Anne's Church. So that's moving along.
Shows you where my brain is, right?
No, I mean, and it's got to go to final design, and which will be announced publicly probably in the next few months, and then the construction will start. So it is. These things do take a long time. There's a feasibility study that had to happen, which is meant to answer the question, well, where does this thing go and how does it work, right? And then you got to design it and then you build it, and it does take time.
So what is the target for it opening? Do you know? Have you got one?
Probably a little over a year out. Yeah.
About a year. And that'll do what exactly? That'll consolidate
2 fire stations and a police station. Yeah, the South End Police Station. So it'll be the first fire station built in the city in over 60 years.
We got to wrap it, Mayor. Thanks a lot.
Just like
Appreciate
that.
it.
Thanks, Barry.
Just like that. We'll talk next week. See you later on. News is next. We're back on the other side. Stay with us.